Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your patience in us getting this meeting underway. I hope everybody is staying safe and well and enjoying some nice weather wherever you may be today. Brad, Jamie, and Les and myself are here to once again provide you with an update on our return to campus plans for the fall. And we will be trying to answer some of the questions that we've received from you to this point in time. As a reminder, we are recording this session and it will be posted on the University Planning Office webpage for future review and for those who were unable to join us live today. Before we start our session today, I would like to begin by acknowledging the lands and the people of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. Our university campus is situated on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas, a branch of the Greater Anishinaabe Nation, which includes Algonquin, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. These lands remain home to a number of Indigenous nations and people. We are thankful to be welcomed on these lands in friendship. Because attendees are tuning in with us remotely from across a variety of locations today, I would like to encourage each and every one of you to take a moment to acknowledge the land you are on. As a university community, we are dedicated to continue to increase our awareness, understanding, and gratitude for the lands we share, and to commit ourselves to truth and reconciliation. Since our last town hall meeting with the Ontario Tech community, it's fair to say that there's been a growing sense of hope and optimism with regard to the pandemic. Indeed, the pace of vaccinations and new case counts have continued to improve across most of Canada, leaving us with the sense, as Ken Steele said in his blog yesterday, that maybe the wind is finally at our backs after months of pandemic doldrums. And yet public health officials continue to remind us daily of the need to be cautious, careful, and continuing to follow public health guidelines, particularly with respect to wearing a mask and practicing physical distancing. Of major concern are the new variants, which as of yesterday, the World Health Organization, just in case you have not heard, has started to label as alpha, beta, delta, gamma, and so on, now labeling the variants with the Greek alphabet rather than stigmatizing the countries of their origin. But with that said, the facts are pretty straightforward. Canada's daily case counts have declined more than 70% since their all-time high, April 15th, and hospitalizations are down by a third. More than 60% of eligible Canadians have received their first dose of vaccine, and at the current pace, 90% will have received first doses, it's estimated, by June 26th. But following the advice of NACI, most provinces announced last week that they would be accelerating the administration of second doses, cutting what was anticipated to be a 16-week wait period by as much as half or even 1/4 of that in the province of Ontario. For some people, according to Premier Doug Ford, Ontario is ready to deliver a 2-dose summer. So, and the 2-dose concept, I want to just touch on this for a second, is very important. With what is referred, when we look at it, we want to think about what's called mature immunity, or in other words, protection that is considerably better, with protection being realized 4 weeks after the receipt of the initial vaccine and enhanced protection as time elapses. If vaccine shipments continue uninterrupted, Canada might hit 80% fully vaccinated status by September 1 and 90% by September 11th. Potentially, and I put emphasis on that word, potentially permitting a much different fall term for the Canadian post-secondary education sector. So it's with that sense of cautious optimism that I'm approaching today's session, and I hope you are as well. So during this presentation, just a few housekeeping notes. We will be answering, as I mentioned earlier, some of the questions that you've submitted, some that we received for the May 3rd meeting that we were unable to get to previously, and others that were received in advance of this session today. And if you think of any questions throughout the course of today's presentation or discussion, you may also submit them using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be summarized at the completion of the meeting and added as an FAQ on the University Planning Office webpage as well, with the video recording of today's event. So with all of that said, I'm going to now hand the mic over to Brad to begin a brief presentation. Over to you, Brad.
Thanks for the mic, Lori. So I'm going to use the exact same presentation that was displayed at the first town hall. Probably walk through it a lot quicker than that one, and noting that it is still on tape on the University Planning Office site. So we'll always start with the guiding principles. As noted at the last meeting, these guiding principles were created over a year ago. They have been reviewed consistently, most recently about a month and a half ago, and they still apply to date. A couple of key points that I really want to focus on is that first one of following the directives from the governments and the public health. This is becoming more and more key, I believe, for us as we do our planning, because there's differing reports on the news. We get in documents, reports about, here are some of the ways to handle cleaning or ventilation. And I specifically call them reports, not research, as we see these come in. And so it's really important for us to continue to point to kind of the Ontario government and the Durham Regional Public Health directives. That is what we will be following. The second bullet point talks about us really concentrating on the health, safety, and well-being of our university community. And it is such a vast community. Each time we have an email that goes out or one of these sessions, we really see the variety of people that we have in our community. And I'll use, because at the last meeting, we talked a lot about our dedication to being an access institution. And that access really does have multiple prongs to it. We've talked with students who say, faculty and staff, truthfully, who say that they have poor internet connection and are looking to get back onto campus to have greater access. And we've also had the opposite of those who have maybe a health condition and they want to stay off of campus. And so it is really balancing a number of different prongs. As we look to the next slide, it's just, again, the different drivers that we were looking at and following as we were creating our scenarios. And the provost kind of started to highlight about the vaccination rollout, and that's something we're really watching now as far as the Ontario phases. But those phases are very general. Like, as you look at phase 3, the only information that it says there is if we have 70 to 80% of adults with a single dose, according to Mr. Elliott, on May 31st, we had 67%, but it's 25% fully vaccinated. It still only says that they will expand indoor meeting and event space. So, phase 2 is talking about 5 people and then expanding indoor meeting space. So we really don't know what that means for us right now as a sector. So we're very closely monitoring that. The next slide, I walked through it the last time of kind of all the different scenarios that we were looking at, and noted that we really believe that, kind of that month ago, that we were going to be probably closer to that realistic plus phase. Now even more confident about that realistic plus. A big part of that, if we talk about the courses, the classes, is there going to be any physical distancing, physical social distancing? We have certain provinces that have said they don't believe so, but are we able to sit and make our plans based on that? This is where we have a lot of the competing notes. We have the Center for Disease Control in the state saying, if it was anything less than 2 meters, you might as well not have any physical distancing. World Health Organization saying maybe we should have 1 meter distancing instead of 2 meters. So these are things that we're watching, but the key way that we made our planning was talking with the faculties to find out what were the key courses that we wanted to have on campus, using the rooms with 2-meter distancing to say, yeah, we can make this possible. And then we moved to classes that were probably 100 or less and saying, if it was possible, could we fit these into rooms? I just used that as an example, but we could walk through each of these different examples for the distancing. Then the final slide is just a bit on the next steps. And I think the key parts I'll highlight is around the third bullet about the milestones and the key next dates. So early June is finalizing our fall schedule. We will be posting in about mid-June for students to register. Reminder to folks that we have held off on posting our winter for registration. Normally we do fall and winter registration. What we'll do in mid-June is have fall registration, and the winter would be kind of a summary of what we think courses are going to look like. Those discussions are happening now, but as the provost mentioned, very optimistic for fall. So even more for winter, that we will see even more on campus for the winter term. And then the early August is the operations plans. And I mentioned early August is that we're obviously making lots of operational plans now, but the questions that we started to get for today's session, some of them were very operational or what if situations. And I think it's better to save those until July or maybe our August meeting to see, what phase are we actually in? Because there's no sense doing a bunch of hypotheticals, noting that we have 3 or 4 different plans depending which phase we're in. So for questions like how we may handle coming in and out of classrooms, I will note that we have worked on a number of different planning scenarios for that, and it will depend on kind of what level of physical distancing has to happen. And we'll talk about that more in the July and August timeframe. So with that, I will end the slideshow and move over to questions. And I'll start the first ones for the provost. Lori, in the last message that you sent out to the community, you noted that we had to make plans before summer. And since at that time we were in lockdown, does that mean, what does that really mean the campus will look like? Or does it look like the campus will be similar to last fall?
Yeah, so first and foremost, as I mentioned in my opening comments, I'm looking forward to the fall term with optimism at this point and hope. And I think we're all on the same page in terms of wanting to see a much more vibrant campus this fall compared to last. So at this point, in terms of our current scheduling, we have about 60% of courses with some component of those courses being offered on campus. So it could be a lab, it could be a tutorial, it could be a small lecture for a small size class. That's where we're at right now. And really at the core of this is the sense of wanting to create a greater sense of, I would say, student engagement, but also staff and faculty engagement on campus as well, to the extent that we possibly can.
And Lori, following up on that, so as I just mentioned, the current Ontario reopening plan may see us move to step 3 by mid-August, which allows for expanded indoor access. If that occurs, do you see more classes moving onto campus?
So there is a challenge inherent within that. So even though the directives, and again, we have to, at every step of the way, respect and adhere to the directives that we're receiving from the provincial officials, public health, et cetera. So I can't emphasize that enough. And in as much as I don't want to say it, we have to be cognizant that there could be a 4th wave at the same time. So in as much as we're planning on where we're at right now, as long as the directives are out of our control, as long as the province is at the helm, we have to respect those. With respect to, if I take the question correctly, Brad, with respect to, could I make some last minute changes? I think that's really where you're coming from. We really want to provide the students with the best experience, but I think it needs to be understood that some of those last minute changes may or may not be possible. So Brad already alluded to the physical distancing requirements. What is the province going to say? Is it going to be 1 meter, 2 meters? What's it going to be? That's one aspect. But the other piece is, what is the maximum allowable capacity in terms of people numbers in any one building? And so that's something that we don't talk a lot about, but that's still going to be a key factor in us being able to decide what it's going to look like. So one of the reasons that we wanted to look at this was to try and plan ahead. We might be able to make some last minute changes, but at this point, it's really hard to predict.
It's a good point on the buildings. I mean, the operational team is even looking at, the number of washrooms we have in each building because, our stalls are not 2 meter distancing apart. Laura, I'm trying to rephrase, but this one's probably just getting even a little bit more detailed on what you just answered. So an instructor asks, I am more confident about a return to campus now than when I was asked about how I wanted to teach a couple of months ago. Is it possible to move my course to on campus now?
Well, it's a really timely question as of today, because we're about to release the schedule this week. So if somebody is feeling that way, they need to let us know right now if we can, and we can see if we can make the change. I mean, it's a really acute time, really, if you want to make a change. With that said, I guess there is the possibility of a change later, but if we've actually acknowledged to students that a course is going to be online, then we have to follow through on that prior acknowledgement. And perhaps if you want to make a change, just prepare yourselves for the possibility of streaming or finding alternate ways to deliver that class to students that want to participate online. One of the reasons we needed to get ahead with the schedule, we wanted to get out to students, is because they have to make decisions about their housing, whether they're going to move from wherever they're currently located to Oshawa or not. It may depend on the extent to which they anticipate being on campus. And so we don't want to be flip-flopping on that to any great degree from the schedule that's set as of this week. So that's the important point. So Brad, I don't know, do you have anything to add to that particular point?
Yeah, I think maybe two parts. First and foremost, just echoing, emphasizing what you said. The scheduling team is really kind of within seconds of finalizing. So please, if there's anybody out there who does want to look at this, get in touch with your deans, planning officers as soon as possible. What we would do would be, we would look to see the size of the classroom that the instructor is looking to be in and see if there is a room open. We wouldn't be changing the time because the time is already set. So it's kind of looking, here's the day and time, is there a room open? And I think you're right, Laura, as far as like the comment on streaming or any alternative. If it was streaming, we did do the pilots kind of over the last 2 weeks, and we're trying to order, because I didn't know which instructors would stream versus not, we're trying to order enough equipment to kind of house or be housed in over 50% of our rooms. So making sure that that room would be possible for streaming. So with that, I will move on to Jamie for a few questions. So Jamie, the provost just mentioned that right now there's more than 60% of courses being offered on campus. And obviously with more students, there's a question about the staff, faculty staff that need to come back. Can you talk a bit about, or what will be the staff return to campus plan look like?
So for the administrative staff, it'll be very much a sort of case-by-case scenario. So we want to understand the public health measures that are being directed to the university and where the university can meet particular health guidelines. But as we provide more staff members for providing frontline service, we are looking at more on-campus services. There would likely be a gradual return to these roles, so an ease back onto campus over late summer for those that are student facing. We've been looking at administrative staff frameworks for work scheduling and hybrid work arrangements. And at this point, the sort of back office supports would be into the fall, where we can provide probably more clarity or have a plan in place for what those work schedules look like. As Lori pointed out at the outset of this call, from the time that we hosted the first town hall or information session to now, things have changed considerably with the vaccination, with vaccination COVID case rates and transmission. So we have a little bit of time. We need to capitalize on that time and gather as much information as we can, recognizing that we need to have appropriate notice for staff to understand what their work schedule looks like leading into the fall academic session.
Thanks, Jamie. And there's a question came in about the programming. I think if I get the question correctly, it deals with, you know, if more people are coming, staff are coming back on campus, there still would need to be that programming online for the students who are not on campus, or maybe better said, this is something that's definitely decentralized within the unit, because there have been units that have come back to us and said they have seen some great benefit of the online session. So keeping both that on campus and online session. Jamie, another one came in. You just mentioned about the return to work plan. Will I be required to come back to work?
Right. So again, I'll point back to the necessary safety measures and protocols that need to be in place. And we're very mindful of the reasons that some staff may have of feeling uncomfortable to return to work with COVID and where we are. The priority is the safety and well-being of our employees. So managers and administrative staff at this point have worked together well to come up with appropriate arrangements for those that need to make their way back onto campus based on their job. I'm not sure we're in a position to say required to come back to work until we know more fully what it looks like and what those safety conditions are. However, as it always has been and will be, if there are needs of employees related to medical conditions that prevent them from coming onto campus or some type of modification, then we work with the employee and with the unit leads to ensure that those arrangements are in place.
I guess you mentioned the needs of employees. I mentioned this at the last meeting about those of you on the call that have young children that you're looking after. Again, massive applause to you for being able to do that, and that compassion of leaving you to work from home. So much like I said, with a lot of conflicting, we just asked you a bit about, will I be required to come back to work? We have the opposite. Even when it is deemed safe to return to campus, will there be options or programs that will allow work from home?
Right, and I can expand a little bit more on the response that I shared during our last information session. And again, on the administrative side of the university employment group, we've been working for now several weeks with a consultancy group. We have representatives from different areas and disciplines of the administrative cohort, and we absolutely are looking at considerations for hybrid work that takes into account opportunities for remote work locations. It, I think, understandably couldn't apply to all jobs on the administrative side, so it is a position by position look. But we're also aware of the changing work environment, the fact that staff, by and large, and the data supports this, are seeking flexibility in how they do their work, and we're responsive to that. So we've been doing a lot of work. We've been having a lot of conversations internally and externally, some positive engagement with other universities to learn about some plans that they have in place, exploring and examining best practices. So very keen to understand some of the risks and implications of a hybrid work arrangement, but we're certainly moving in that direction to see what we can put in place for If not September 1st, then later in the fall, that will absolutely look and feel different than pre-COVID for a number of administrative positions.
Thanks, Jamie. Les, we'll move over to you for a few. So the provost mentioned the optimism for fall, and we referred to the 60% of courses being on campus, and I think these ones are questions about the impact on research. And I'll break this down maybe into at least two pieces. Faculty member asking, can I restart my research on campus, period?
Right. As most of you know, we've continued to have research activities going on for more than a year at this point. And what's unique about the COVID period is that everything has had to go through an application and approval process. The virtue of that is that we have a pretty good record of all of the research activities that are going on campus at any one time. The difference really is that a lot of this activity has been going on without interference. And so I would just sort of highlight that what we would expect is that faculty can continue to apply, for those of you who haven't applied, to come back to campus. We have a process, and there's a return to on-campus research application and a risk mitigation process that you go through. We've generally seen increase in applications over the last sort of 4 weeks or so. I strongly urge everyone to, if you have it in your mind that you want to restart your lab or return to other research activities on campus, that you submit your application now with an idea that you will be back on campus, frankly, by late July or so, because we would really want to put a bit of a pause on applications in August and September, just because I think that a lot of our focus in terms of operations is going to be on getting courses started in that time period. So that's our recommendation.
And then thinking from the operations team, Les, that's good, because it helps us get like the focus cleaning happen there for those that are coming back before we move over to the classrooms. This one just kind of came in, Les, as far as at the last meeting, you talked a little bit about the human subjects, the research ethics board. So I guess similar type of question of, do you see the human participants opening up more as we get closer to September as well?
Well, I think that realistically we can count on an increase of activity. But right now, a lot of the decisions are in the hands of the Research Ethics Board that are doing a risk assessment on each individual project. There have been some human participant research projects that have been approved that are going on even during the current shutdown. But we encourage all researchers who are working on human participant research activities to have a direct dialogue with the Research Ethics Board, first and foremost, because their role is to protect human participants.
Thanks, Les. Another one for you, Les. With no classes on campus last year, or I guess very few classes on campus last year, our research students had the benefits of quite a lot of open space to work, to move around, to eat outside of the lab. And I think the question is dealing with what will happen as we see more people on campus. Like that benefit is going to disappear. So what would we be doing for our research students?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a terrific question. Certainly for many of those people working in the labs, they have had, I wouldn't say a lot of freedom, but they've at least not been competing for space outside their labs. And that's definitely going to be a consideration that will have to affect all of their decision making and actions. I would say that the virtue of September, October is that the weather is very pleasant, and for things certainly like eating and so on, I can imagine that people will eat outside and that there will still be lots of latitude in those spaces and the use of the commons and so on.
Thanks, Les. That's a reminder to me. One of the faculty members had asked for us to look at where the picnic tables are situated outside of UA and in Pulaski Commons and make sure there's some good distancing. So I will be following up on that. We do have a few operational questions. I said I was trying to delay them for the what if, but there's a few here that we continue to get, so I'll try and address some of them. The first one deals with, will the university implement a mandatory vaccine policy? And, again, highly optimistic, as the provost said, that more and more will be vaccinated and hopefully even 2-dose vaccination. But we know that, there will be vaccine hesitancy, and there are some that will never be able to get vaccinated due to health reasons. What I can say is right now, all universities are having this discussion. There is a group of the Council of Ontario Universities who are looking both from a legal opinion, but also as far as a practical protocol implementation. I would say right now, our current assumption for the university is that vaccines would not be mandatory as far as coming into the open buildings. Where we might start to look more would be if there's kind of restricted, for example, would there be mandatory vaccines or at least showing vaccinations for varsity sports type of idea. So this is something that is very heavily reviewed right now, but at this time, I'd say we are not seeing that vaccines will be mandatory. The next one goes on about if I am vaccinated, will I still need to wear PPE when I come onto campus? And there's been a few others, like will masks be mandatory? Will the eyewear be mandatory? Definitely with the eyewear, something we're very, very much watching. And right now, assuming with kind of the restrictions that will not be in place by September, that's our assumption. Say as far as masks, this is where I was talking about with the guidelines that we're following the directives of the government and public health. And right now, there currently is a directive that indoors masks will be worn at all time. So we'll continue to watch that. I think that we welcome that as a precaution to keep our campus, to remain as a safe place. So right now we are assuming that masks would be worn indoors. The next one is a little bit longer. I'll try and read it out. In the US, where schools have reopened, health authorities like the CDC, Center for Disease Control, are emphasizing the importance of airflow, ventilation, air filters, et cetera, et cetera. What types of changes have been made to classrooms in 61 Charles, given that the rooms have no windows and poor air circulation? So I'll expand this past 61 Charles. If you think about the great thing for Ontario Tech being a new university, the majority of our buildings are newer and have ventilation systems that are above kind of the industry standard or what COVID is looking for. Places like 61 Charles, the portables, 55 Bond, where they have rooftop ventilation systems, those are definitely ones that we are looking into. So maybe what I'll do is I'll say, so first, in the guidelines I talked about, we can't just follow whatever report comes out. So there has been work across Council of Ontario Universities and the facilities group, and the university sector is following the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers, so ASHRAE standards, and kind of their expert advice. The next thing I'll say is that, as I mentioned, our current ventilation for our newer buildings is above ASHRAE standards, but that doesn't mean we just stop there. We have replaced all of our air filtration, and we'll be doing that at probably earlier intervals than normally recommended. The other thing that we're looking at, we've already purchased a few and tested it out and looking at purchasing more. It's called REMI technology. And we'll put some more of this into the FAQs. But this goes into kind of the ventilation system, and it's an active air purification system. So what it does is it treats kind of in the air ducts, or goes through the air ducts to treat spaces and surfaces. And the technology is proven to kill 99.9% of viruses, bacteria, and mold by eliminating airborne and surface contaminants. So this is something that we're really looking into and adding into kind of all the spots, especially the spots like 61 Charles or the UL portables. Maybe my key there is I struggle with how to answer this question. I saw it because too little seems a little bit flippant of just saying we're higher than the standard, but too much gets very technical. And to be honest, I kind of even glaze over as Ken Bright starts telling me it. So what we are doing is taking this information to the Joint Health and Safety Committee to make sure that they're aware, and we'll put more information onto the FAQ. With that, Lori, I'm gonna turn back to you. Flowing on, I guess, what I just was saying with the ventilation. So we've heard about investments in security, cleaning, ventilation, but what investments have been made for teaching?
It's a really good question. And first and foremost, I do want to assure everyone that we've been investing in the teaching side of the house, and primarily through reallocating funds in the budget to support the instructional side of the house. Before I go too far into what we're doing, just to give you some sense of that commitment, our revenues for our budget for the coming year are identical to our revenues from 2019. The main reason being, I believe, frozen tuition, which has not allowed us to realize greater revenues. Tuition and grant from the province are our primary sources of revenue. So as a result of that, what's interesting is the revenues haven't gone up, but our investments in people have gone up by over $6 million over the same period of time. So I want to assure people that we are shifting money to the instructional side of the house and towards people. I've actually got a list here of different things that we're looking at doing. And I think rather than miss anything, I want to refer to the list. So in 2020, for example, we cut the number of sections that we had for, in 2019, we cut the number of sections that we had for courses, and we're now increasing those number of sections back. Maybe not to that level, but we have increased the number of sections that we're offering this year. We've also split some courses into sections. We've done it specifically. So there's a section on campus, face-to-face, and a section online to meet student demand. We're also introducing new technology into the classroom. And we've been, as I think Brad alluded earlier, hosting some opportunities for faculty members and instructors to come in and take a look at that technology. Everything from enhanced microphones to new cameras and more cameras, those sorts of things in these spaces to give us some options with respect to how we deliver classes. We've also increased TA support for the coming year. And importantly, there's two important strategies with respect to the TLC. We've actually initiated what's called a Teaching Scholar in Residence program. I believe the applications for that program have just recently closed. And 2 individuals from amongst our existing full-time faculty ranks will be given course releases to address instructional issues in an online environment. More specifically, I know one of the areas, I can't remember the second area, but one of the areas is looking at different ways of assessment or different modes of assessment for working with students in online environments. So we're trying to create some mentorship and some opportunities for some people that are really excelling in this new reality to help support their colleagues. We've also recently shifted the focus of the TLC. It has historically been focused on introducing technology to faculty members to utilize in the classroom. I think after a year and a bit of this, we're all quite familiar with technology in the classroom right now. So the focus is going to shift to more emphasis on supporting instructional needs for faculty members, instructors, TAs, and so on. And then I would also let you know that we're putting $1.5 million into reserve to support smaller clinical sections and to create simulation labs, et cetera, and to do some other innovative things that we might have not anticipated having to do, but we may have to do for the coming year. So there's a lot of investment going on, but those investments are because we've had to shift money from somewhere else in the budget. So I hope that list is complete, unless you can think of anything that needs to be added, Brad.
No, I think that one's complete. There was one clarification that was asked about the whether it was an increase of TA support from last year, noting that there was the big cut of sections. So just noting that I can't say, you know, all sections were identically replaced, but just wanted to answer that we do have more sections that we're running this year than we had run 2 years ago. Laura, I'm sorry, I'm trying to group these together. Maybe just before I do so, with the budget, Provost noted kind of it's the same revenue as 2 years ago, mainly due to the domestic tuition freeze. Question kind of like on the enrollment side, noting that we're probably just about a week too soon with that question. The high school student deadline is tomorrow. We'll clean up some data. Obviously, the mature kind of trickles in over the next 2 months. But I would say right now, early indications are at or above budget level. But I would ask folks to wait for the any provost announcement in the near future on that, but looking positive compared to the past. Lori, there's questions about like the streaming technology that you just referred to. I'll break it down into parts. Is the streaming technology mandatory for those teaching on campus?
No, actually, we really simply moved to, I think, as you said, Brad, over 50% of the classrooms, we want to outfit with the technology so people have options to use it to provide supports for students. But it is an optional choice at this point in time.
Yeah, definitely trying to secure it. You can tell there's a lot of schools that are trying to get this streaming technology, so we're going out to many vendors to see if we can get that many. Lori, what supports would you be putting in place? I think you touched on this a bit, but what supports would you be putting in place to help with the streaming technology for those that are going to be using it?
Yeah, so to this point, I mentioned that we've been doing some introductory sections or sessions with faculty so that they want to check it out. We're more than happy to, if there's folks, you know, that are listening to this today and haven't had that opportunity to reach out, and we'll try to arrange additional sessions for people to be introduced to some of the new technology. So that option is there. The staff in the Teaching and Learning Center are also going to be trained up on helping facilitate individuals in how to use this technology. I think both from a technical, here's the technological way to operate the technology, but also from an instructional perspective, also trying to support faculty members from that perspective as well. So there's lots of options there in terms of trying to figure out that support. But if folks are interested, just simply please reach out and indicate that interest to us.
Perfect answer. It actually answered the next one as well, I think, where they're asking about when will information be on where the streaming technology is or how they could get training. So we'll follow up with where to reach out on all of that and get more information to folks. I like this question that just came in. So Lori, it's about the fall class. Faculty member has done a lot of work last fall to create an online version of my course. Currently, my teaching schedule is online, and I was planning on tweaking to reuse the online version. is it possible at the last minute I'll be told I need to make it work as a hybrid? I don't think hybrid teaching is, it's easy to move back after they've done all that work, I think is really the question. They would need notice and prep time. So I think the key crux of this is, once you see the June timeframe, do you think that people will be forced to come back more onto campus?
Yeah, I think it all comes down, that's kind of one of those questions that's hard to answer right at this point in time, because there's quite a few variables that we have to take into consideration. So we have to consider, as I mentioned earlier, how we've actually advertised over this week or within a couple weeks, our mode of delivery. So once we make that open to our students to take a look at, we're going to have to maintain that commitment. If you want to shift back, as we said, maybe you can, but we have to remain open to that commitment we've made to students. So I think at that point, again, it's a bit of a negotiation with the deans, helping to manage how the faculty, both the instructors as well as the faculty as a whole, want to manage their students. It's a good question at this point, because we have to keep in mind we're optimistic and we really do hope that we're going to get back onto campus, but there could be another blip, another wave that is going to force us completely online again. And I don't want us to lose perspective on that.
Yeah, I think I might have stumbled over the question about how I take your answer is, we told the students that something's going to be totally online, or they at least have that ability. An instructor could make the choice to come back, but this instructor was saying, I'd like to stay online. And I think the answer is, yeah, we've told the students that, we've told the faculty member, because they need prep, that they would be able to stay online.
Okay, I got it now. So
yeah, sorry, I stumbled.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But good explanation there, Brad.
So the next one relates a bit to the engagement. So I think, all three of you have mentioned you see more engagement on campus now. So not even just, we continue to focus, or at least I do, on the classrooms as a key component, but all the other parts to get engagement. So I think I'm going to ask this question to all of you. As it relates to activity engagement, what are some of the samples that you see increases to enhance engagement in the fall? And then I'll come back to the process piece that I'll answer. But I'll go around in a circle. So Laurie, going outside of the classroom, let's think about the student engagement. Do you have a few examples of some engagement you see to get more students on campus or get them to stay on campus?
Certainly, and I think it's important. So yes, I do see increased activity levels, obviously, in the classroom. But if we have expectations and our students have expectations to be on campus and receiving instruction in classroom environments, I think we also need to be cognizant of providing support services to them at the same time. So even though we may have a graduated return to work, in the sense that, one example, maybe not all academic advisors are on campus, but I think we probably should have some academic advisors present on campus. One thing I haven't talked to the deans about yet, but is first and foremost on my mind, is to what extent are the dean's offices open for general inquiries? So could we be rotating staff in dean's offices such that there's at least always one or two people there to receive foot traffic coming in, because the foot traffic will be on campus. Those are a couple of examples. Above and beyond that, I mean, we'll be working with units like Student Life and with Varsity Athletics, et cetera, on their plans as well. What exactly those are going to look like at this point, I'm not sure, but I think we should be looking for a graduated return, perhaps very slow at first, but a graduated return. We can't just flip the switch and then have everybody back. And we don't want to just say nobody comes back. We've got to make that slow graduated return over time.
So I think the rest of us have about 37 seconds each to answer. So we give Laurie some closing time. Same question to you is about kind of the increased engagement you see happening with research and researchers on campus?
Sure, two pieces. One is we're already beginning to see an increase in revised applications for research on-campus research activity. So researchers are beginning to think about having students come into their labs more. And I think that we're going to support faculty doing that more and more so in the fall, particularly after sort of come October. And then the second piece in general is that the fall is a very important time for our graduating students as they think about whether they want to do graduate programs, and that they often need some kind of research profile, that kind of engagement. And that's a mentoring role that is really important. And some of that can be done online, but some of that can be is sort of a face-to-face experience for students, and an important part of us recruiting students into our own graduate programs as well. So that would be what I'd highlight.
And I like those less. I had the luxury of sitting in a few last year, and it's like that research brown bag, getting back to that and seeing some of those presentations. It's great. So Jamie, same question to you about for faculty and staff, that engagement of having at least a little bit on campus, if you see some ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go back to the remote work strategy that we're talking about, where we know that to have people combine a remote work location, be it at home or somewhere else, with on campus, there needs to be purposeful and meaningful interaction and reasons for coming back on site to deliver work. And with that, we recognize the impact to team culture, to team collaboration, to communication visibility. There's a host of considerations that we're looking into when we begin thinking about the parameters and the features of a hybrid work arrangement. So those are all tools and supports that we're going to need to consider. We're going to need to have some sort of structure in place. Easier when everyone is working from the same mode. And so where everyone's working from home, we've found a way to adapt with respect to communication and correspondence. But when you start having people and staff return to the office, now you're in a new environment. And we know that with a new environment like that, the integration changes and the different supports need to be there. And so that's what we're focused on among other priorities as part of that project.
And then just two last quick ones before I hand it over to Laurie. I'll note with more students, faculty, staff coming onto campus, yes, we will be opening up food services probably closer to the September time. Reminder folks that we have changed food service providers, and this year has definitely given us a year to test out some new things. So I believe that we'll see some advancements there. And a question on the operational. So in the past, there's been some, I'll say, red tape in kind of applying for on-campus events and getting things running. You know, will that be easier? Yes. I think as the government kind of eases up, we have been working with our operational team in order to be able to decentralize less, and the research team is great. You know, they've created what are the simple overarching principles and guidelines, and then passed to the faculties for the faculty review committees that we're going to be able to decentralize. So I do believe as we approach fall, things will get a little bit easier as far as being able to move quickly on these events. With that, Laurie, I will hand it over to you for any concluding remarks.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Brad. And I want to begin by thanking everybody who's here today in attendance for our second town hall session. A reminder that we will be hosting another town hall in July and another one in August as we get closer to the beginning of the fall term. Just a reminder as well that we have been recording this session, and we will be putting it on the planning office website along with a summarized FAQ with respect to the questions that we received today, as well as those that we were unable to get to. As always, there's more questions than we have time to respond to. So I thank everybody for the pre-submitted questions and also for those that came in today, and we will be posting those results for you. So just in closing, I do want to emphasize that we are optimistic. There is a sense of hope and a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, if you'll let me phrase it that way. We remain optimistic, and I hope you do too as well. So folks, just enjoy the summer weather. Make sure you take care of your own health and your mental health, and have a wonderful rest of your day. So thanks again, everybody, until July.
Thank you, everybody.